Welcome to presentation on the Apprenticeship Act 1961 presented by RAVI PRAKASH MATHUR, Senior Lecturer, Mechanical Engineering Department, Government Polytechnic College, Jodhpur. The Apprenticeship Act 1961 having the following objectives: an act to provide for the regulation and control of training of apprentices and for matters connected therewith, to promote a conducive climate for training and imparting skills to youth, to prepare youth to meet the growth needs of fast expanding industries, trade and business, to be gainfully employed in them, to resolve any grievances with respect to the apprenticeship in a company or an institution, to ensure their training in accordance with the planned program and monitor the progress thereof. The whole structure of the Apprenticeship Act is given in the form of contents having 3 chapters. Chapter 1 is preliminary. Chapter 2, which is of more concern as far as our course is concerned, that is the apprentices and their training, and the third chapter relates to the authorities. We begin with the first chapter and the section 2 having some definitions. Some of the definitions are discussed here. The apprentice. Apprentice means a person who is undergoing apprenticeship training in pursuance of a contract of apprenticeship. Apprenticeship training means a course of training in any industry or establishment undergone in pursuance of a contract of apprenticeship and under prescribed terms and conditions, which may be different for different categories of apprenticeship. Other definitions are quoted in the Act, namely All India Council, Apprenticeship Advisor, Appropriate Government, and many others. Section 3 describes the qualification for being engaged as an apprentice. A person shall not be qualified for being engaged as an apprentice to undergo apprenticeship training in any designated trade unless he is not less than 14 years of age, and for designated trades related to hazard industries not less than 18 years of age, and secondly, he satisfies such standards of education and physical fitness as may be prescribed. Next, section 4, contract of apprenticeship. No person shall be engaged as an apprentice to undergo apprenticeship training in a designated trade unless such person, or if he is a minor, his guardian, has entered into a contract of apprenticeship with the employer. Secondly, the apprenticeship training shall be deemed to have commenced on the date on which the contract of apprenticeship has been entered into Rule Section 1. Every contract of apprenticeship may contain such terms and conditions as may be agreed to be by the parties to the contract in accordance with the provision of Act. Every contract of apprenticeship entered into under subsection 1 shall be sent by the employer's employer within 30 days to the apprenticeship advisor. The apprenticeship advisor shall register the contract of apprenticeship within 30 days from the date of its receipt. Where the central government, after consulting the Central Apprenticeship Council, makes any rule varying the terms and conditions of apprenticeship training of any category of apprentices undergoing such training, then the terms and conditions of every contract of apprenticeship relating to the category of apprentices and subsisting immediately before the making of such rule shall be deemed to have been modified accordingly. Section 5. Novation of contract of apprenticeship. This relates that where an employer with whom a contract of apprenticeship has been entered into, if for any reason unable to fulfill his obligations under the contract, and with the approval of the apprenticeship advisor, it is agreed between the employer and the apprentice or his guardian and any other employer that the apprentice shall be engaged as an apprentice under the other employer for the unexpired portion of the period of apprenticeship training, the agreement on registration with the apprenticeship advisor shall be deemed to be the contract of apprenticeship between the apprentice or his guardian and the other employer on and from the date of such registration. Section 6. Period of apprenticeship training. The period of apprenticeship training which shall be specified in the contract of the apprenticeship shall be as follows. In case of the trade apprentices who, having undergone institutional training in a school or other institution recognized by the National Council, have passed the trade test of examination conducted by the Council or by an institution recognized by the Council, the period of apprenticeship training shall be such as may be prescribed. In the case of trade apprentices who, having undergone institutional training in a school or other institution affiliated to recognized by the Board of Council of Technical Education or any other authorities, or courses approved under the scheme which the central government may be by notification in the official gazette specify in this behalf, have passed the trade test or examination conducted by the Board of State Council or authority or by any other agency authorized by the central government, the period of apprenticeship training shall be such as may be prescribed. In the case of other three trade apprentices, the period of apprenticeship training shall be such as may be prescribed. Section 7. Termination of apprenticeship contract. The contract of apprenticeship shall be terminated on the expiry of the period of apprenticeship training. Secondly, either party to a contract of apprenticeship may make application to the apprenticeship advisor for the termination of the contract. Thirdly, after considering the contents of the application and the objections, if any, filed by the other party, the apprenticeship advisor may permit if he is satisfied. Where a contract is terminated for failure on the part of the employer to carry out the terms and conditions of the contract, the employer shall pay to the apprentice such compensation as may be prescribed. On the other hand, for such failure on the part of the apprentice or his guardian shall refund to the employer as cost of training such amount as may be determined by the apprenticeship advisor. Section 8. Number of apprentices for a designated trade. The central government shall prescribe the number of apprentices to be engaged by the employer for designated trade and optional trade. Secondly, several employees may join together either themselves or through an agency approved by an apprenticeship advisor according to the guidelines issued from time to time by the central government in this behalf for the purpose of providing apprenticeship training to the apprentices under them. Section 9. Practical and basic training of apprentices. Every employer shall make suitable arrangements in the workplace for imparting a course of practical training to every apprentice engaged by him. The central apprenticeship advisor for any other person not below the rank of assistant apprenticeship advisor authorized by a central apprenticeship advisor in writing in his behalf shall be given all reasonable facilities to access to each such apprentice with a view to test his work and to ensure that the practical training is being imparted in accordance with the approved program. Section 11. Obligation of employers. Every employer shall have the following obligation in relation to apprentices, namely: number 1, to provide the apprentice with the training in his trade in accordance with the provisions of the Act and the rules made thereunder. Secondly, if the employer is not himself qualified in his trade, to ensure that a person who possesses the prescribed qualification is placed in charge of the training of the apprentice. Thirdly, to carry out his obligations under the contract of apprenticeship. Section 12. Obligation of apprentices. Just like the obligations of employees, there are some obligations of apprentices. Number 1. Every trade apprentice undergoing apprenticeship training shall have the following obligations. Number 1. To learn his trade consciously and diligently, and endeavor to qualify himself as a skilled craftsman before the expiry of the period of training. Second, the obligation to attend the practical and instructional classes regularly. Third obligation, to carry out all lawful order of his employer and superiors in the establishment. Number 4, to carry out his obligations under the contract of apprenticeship. Every graduate or technician, apprenticeship technician, vocational apprentice undergoing apprenticeship training shall have the following obligation. Number 1, to learn his subject field in engineering or technology or vocational courses constantly and diligently at the place of training. To attend the practical and instructional classes regularly. Section 13. Payment to apprentices. The employer shall pay to every apprentice during the period of apprenticeship training such stipend as a rate may be specified in the contract of apprenticeship. Section 40. Health, safety and welfare of apprentices. Where any apprentices are undergoing training in a factory, the provisions of Factory Act 1948 shall apply in relation to the health, safety and welfare of the apprentices. Section 15. Hours of work, overtime, leave and holidays. Number 1. The weekly and daily hours of work of an apprentice while undergoing practical training in a workplace shall be as determined by the employer, subjected to the compliance with the training duration if prescribed. Secondly, no apprentice shall be required to allow to work overtime except with the approval of the apprenticeship advisor. Third, an apprentice shall be entitled to such leave and holidays as are observed in the establishment in which he is undergoing training. Section 16. Employer's liability for the compensation for injury. In personal injury is caused to an apprentice by accident arising out of and in the course of his training as an apprentice, his employer shall be liable to pay compensation which shall be determined and paid so far as may be in accordance with the provisions of the Workmen's Compensation Act 1923, subjected to the notice specified in the schedule. Section 17. Conduct and discipline. In all matters of the conduct and discipline, the apprentice shall be governed by the rules or regulation applicable to employees of the corresponding category in the establishment in which the apprentice is undergoing training. Section 18. Apprentices are trainees and not workers. Every apprentice undergoing apprenticeship training in a designated trade in an establishment shall be a trainee and not a worker, and the provisions of any law with respect to labor shall not apply to or in relation to such apprentice. Section 9. Records and returns. Every employer shall maintain records of the progress of training of each apprentice undergoing apprenticeship training in his establishment in such form as may be prescribed. Section 20. Settlement of disputes. Any disagreement or dispute between an employer and an apprentice arising out of the contract of apprenticeship shall be referred to the apprenticeship advisor for decision. Any person aggrieved by the decision of the apprenticeship advisor may appeal against the decision to the Apprenticeship Council. Section 21. Holding of test and grant of certificate and conclusion of training. Every trade apprenticeship who are completed the period of training may appear for a test to be conducted by the National Council or any other agency authorized by the central government to determine his proficiency in the designated trade in which he has undergone apprenticeship training. Section 22. Offer and acceptance of employment. Every employer shall formulate its own policy for recruiting any apprenticeship who has completed the period of apprenticeship training in his establishment. Chapter 3, which is not of too much concern with our course, is still mentioned here as authorities. Section 23 for authorities. In addition to the government, there shall be the following authorities under this Act, namely National Council, Central Apprenticeship Council, State Council, State Apprenticeship Council, All India Council, Regional Board, etc. Section 30. Offences and penalty. If any employer or any other person contravenes the provision of this Act, punishment up to 6 months or a fine or both is provided under this Act. Thank you.